there's different sort of definitions of strategy, right? And so one of them is, there's two that I like using, and I think both fit here nicely. One is it's the art of always questioning your basic assumptions, right? Like, what am I doing and why am I doing it? Not just the what, but the why are you doing it? And the second one is that it's an art of allocating scarce resources. And I think that in that sense, when you have such a shattering thing like COVID, which obviously affected a lot of people all over the world, not only Israel's tourism sector, it sort of forces you to start questioning both, because all your assumptions all of a sudden are blown out the door, and you have to start really figuring out the big questions and how life looks now under this case of COVID. And it's funny that we're talking about COVID. I don't know if you saw, just sort of side note, last week, the World Health Organization issued an official release saying COVID is no longer a global health risk.
Wonderful.
So just sort of, just as a sort of closure to that. But going back to strategy, so really these assumptions are, all up in the air. And then you see, okay, how do I allocate what resources I have, which obviously are going to be more scarce than before, because if you look at a government budget, at a time of pandemic, you're going to be, allocating and dedicating resources to health, to, personal safety, to things like that. You're not going to be putting them in necessarily in building tourism and infrastructure when there's no inbound tourism, right? So it's a sort of active balancing. On the other hand, you also understand tourism is going to come back in 1, in 2, in 5 years, and you can't not invest now, because if you want to be ready for when it comes back, you have to have done something in the meantime. So it's this really delicate act constantly of balancing the two.
And that's really neat. I think it's because you talk about it in terms of resources. I generally look at resources at the operative level. I mean, yes, it's a strategic thinking, but operative level thinking is about what resources do I have available, and what's the doctrine that's balancing. Like, what are my values, and what are the things that are I'm either going to allow me or not allow me to use those resources over time. By bringing it up a level and saying, hey, resources, yes, but it's also about really getting to those base assumptions, those root causes of why things happen, and really looking at what we know and why we know it, and then having that sort of trickle down into how we distribute those resources. It's sort of almost the combination of the two. It's not this or this, right?
It's never black and white, right?
Right. It's not. It's like but it's not even that it's black and white. It's almost like it's not even gray. It's almost like it's this and this together is a very functional way of looking at strategy. It's look at root causes, try and understand where are we at making assumptions, what's our knowledge base, what's the functional reason for this, and what do we think in terms of future thinking as a result, because it's ideal type future thinking. And then, okay, well, what kind of resources do we need, and how are we going to distribute those to different groups to be able to do what we want done now and in the future.
And then the question, which of course underlies all of that, it might tie together, is the why. Why are we doing all of this? Why are we making these decisions in this order? Why are we allocating those resources, et cetera, et cetera?
And that's functionally root causes. Like, it's why. Like, there's a concept called the 5 whys, right? It's you ask why 5 times just to get to a root cause. You might not even get to 5, but like by asking it 5 times, you really are getting into why. Why are we doing this? What's purpose? And that's what root causes are, or purpose statements.
Yeah, so that's interesting, because there's also, I just heard a lecture a couple of weeks ago, and they spoke about the opposite when you're coming down into planning. So one of the things I do in my current role is I oversee the planning process in the company. And then so one of the questions which you're told to keep asking is, and then what? Right. So you're doing something, and then what? And then
I use what ifs.
Right, what ifs, exactly. And then it sort of helps you drill, not from the strategic, but to the really tactical level of what you're measuring and what the next parameter, the next KPI is.
Right.
Okay, and then what? And then what? So here it's reverse engineering that. So why? And it's really the two sides of the spectrum.
Yeah. It's actually it's almost like a bridge between the two. You've got, actually, if we were going to really think about it, it's why leads to, into what ifs, which is sort of operative level thinking, like, well, what if we were to do this, or what if we were to do that, and then okay, and then what, to really dig down into that tactical stage of, hey, this is the nature of here are our KPIs, here are OKRs, Here's our strategy, our ideal type vision. Here's OKRs that are going to help make that vision, and then here's our KPIs that are tactically going to be our markers for key results. You got these? Okay, great. We've met our KPIs, and then what? And now what? I love that. That's such a great way of sort of bringing those three ideas sort of together. It's really cool. Thank you for joining us in the Doctor's Den. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hope to see you next time.